Mitch Santner made his professional debut before the first Avengers film was released. His career is just from another era, before TikTok and when Elon Musk was on the left side of politics. It was a long, long time ago. It was so far back that you won't even remember the start of his career, or the fact that when he began, he was a red ball bowler. He made his professional debut in 2011 for first-class cricket, and he didn't play any white ball cricket until 2014. In his debut limited overs game, he didn't actually even bowl. But quickly, that just became the form of the game that we talk about. I mean, we call him New Zealand Mitch Santner, but he might also be CSK's Mitch Santner, right? And after a while, first-class game, test game, they didn't seem to need him at all. And in this test, he probably only played because the beast Michael Bracewell went home because his wife was birthing a mini beast. And now, just to get a game, it needs to be a ragging pitch overseas, and the other spinner needs to actually leave the country. And yet this white ball bowler, almost given up on by his own country, has just outbowled India's greatest combination. Mitch Santner has not had a great test career, but he certainly just had a great day. As a cricket journalist, I would travel sometimes up to 200 days a year. I loved watching cricket games. I loved going to new countries. It was an absolute dream. But there was one thing I hated more than anything else about it, and it was this little pin. The thing that I need to change my SIM card in every new country. The absolute worst thing about this pin and SIM cards is when I was traveling to the West Indies, of having to arrive in every new island or country and having to work out if I could still find this pin and then line up and get my SIM card in every single airport. Well, now we have the answer thanks to Sally. They can make it so you never have to worry about this nonsense ever again. They use an eSIM app that once you install once, it is easy, simple, and cheap. Oh, and it works in more than 160 countries. And you can throw these pins away forever, because now you just need to download the Sally app before your trip. And if you do it with our code, Good Areas, you get an exclusive 15% discount on Sally eSIM data plans. So before your next holiday or work trip or any time you have to travel to another country, download the Sally app and use the code Good Areas, or one word, at checkout, and you can travel like a pro with Sally. Mitch Santner does not bowl much in first-class cricket. And I was thinking to myself, how do I best show this? And I was like, who are the other 32-year-old professional spinners around the world that we could have a look at? And we found a load. My first thought was Keshav Maharaj must be roughly the same age, right? And it turns out he's only a couple of years older. But they both grew up in places where spin is salad, right? It's not needed at all. And yet look at the amount of deliveries that Maharaj has bowled in first-class cricket compared to Mitch Santner. Some of this is probably because Maharaj was better at red ball cricket and obviously also went on to play in county cricket and other things, but that is a lot of first-class deliveries. Mitch Santner has not bowled a lot. All these other bowlers here didn't have Santner's advantage of also being able to bat at times either. And you look at them, 31-year-olds, 32-year-olds, they have bowled a lot with the red ball in their career. They are used to it. Mitch Santner, for a 32-year-old spinner, 10,000 balls is just, it's not a lot. And of course, when you compare him to all these other guys, I don't think there's anyone here that would think that he is a better first-class spinner than the rest of this group. I mean, even Ish Sodhi, when you have a look at this, is someone who has had a lot more success in the first-class game. Mitch Santner has played quite a few tests. He's been involved in first-class cricket for a long time. He's played home and away and everywhere else. And he just has not taken wickets when he has had a red ball in his hand. And so we thought, what is he like in test cricket compared to the other spinners in his game? And we assumed that this graphic would show like Mitch Santner with a really high average and everyone else with a really low average. That's not what we found. In fact, when Mitch Santner has played in test matches, he's held his own. He's not been good, and he's certainly not been anywhere near great, but he's actually bowled okay. So we had to try and work out what was actually going on here. And so we looked at him in Asia. Mitch Santner, when bowling in Asia, has been completely and thoroughly outbowled by every other spinner. When Mitch Santner is bowling in other places, his numbers hold up. The problem with Mitch Santner's career up until this point has been the fact that he hasn't taken many first-class wickets, that he's played on a lot of pitches in New Zealand where he's bowled okay, but he still hasn't made any kind of impact at all that has shown that he's a good bowler. But most specifically, when you go game by game in Asia, he has been outbowled all the time. When you're a spinner, you can be as good as you want in New Zealand. You can be nagging, you can keep the economy down, you can outbowl the other spinner in the game. No one cares because you don't bowl enough and you're never remembered. When you go to Asia, that is what you're remembered for. And Mitch Santner has been, even for someone with a bad first-class record, terrible in Asia. But this test match is in Asia, right? And if you have a look at it, a few things went his way. One was the spin bowling average based on the ends. At one end of this ground, the wicket is doing absolutely loads, and at the other end, you can kind of handle it a little bit. The only issue here is that Santner's actually bowled at both ends, and he's been one of the more successful bowlers at the bad end. But he still got something out of this pitch from both ends that most other spinners didn't. And I think part of this is based on the release points. This has been a very good test match to be a very tall spinner. Mitch Santner is a tall spinner. Washington Sundar is a tall spinner. Ashwin is a tall spinner. Ashwin took the first 3 wickets for India. Washington Sundar's taken almost every wicket afterwards, and Mitch Santner took a whole bunch of wickets in that period as well. There have been a lot of wickets taken by tall guys in this test. There have been almost no wickets to short spinners in this match. So that's a pretty good wicket to come on if you're a tall spin bowler. It's worth noting that very recently he was in Sri Lanka, and he wasn't just bad. He wasn't just awful. He was maybe as bad as he has ever been. I didn't think they could even use him in a test against India. Now, it's not just being tall, it's the fact that Santner has specifically got variable bounce all the way through. When he has bowled the ball a little bit short, around that 5 to 5.5 metre mark, he's got a lot of balls that have actually shot through quite low. He also had a bunch of other balls that bounced quite high. In the first innings, he was the spinner that created the most variable bounce. He was also turning it, and he was very accurate. So he was getting variable bounce, but putting the ball in a dangerous position. But there's something else that he did that I think is far more interesting here. This is a guy who in Test cricket has tried pretty much everything so far, and it hasn't worked. On a wicket that was in his favour, it's probably most spinners would just go, okay, I'm just going to bowl my stock ball over and over again, hit a spot, this wicket is helping me, and let's see how I go. Mitch Santner did the opposite of that. He decided to bowl as slow as 72 kilometres an hour and as quick as 97 kilometres an hour. He had a 25 kilometre pace differential. I'm not sure how many times I've ever seen a bowler do that so consistently. So instead of just bowling at his normal speed over and over again and then varying it with a slightly quicker one or a slightly slower one, which is all really good skills from a spinner, he was like, no. I'm going to bowl almost at Craig Brathwaite's speed and also almost at Rashid Khan's speed. I'm going to do everything in between and I'm going to chop and change and you're never going to know. On top of that, he would bowl close to the wicket and then wider to the wicket. He was changing up everything but landing the ball in the same spot over and over again. This was ninja level bowling. This is not a guy that you expect to have a test bowling average of over 40 and a first class bowling average of over 40. And the truth is that Mitchell Santner has just not bowled at this level in a test match before. We know, because we've seen so much of him in white ball cricket, how skillful he can be. And then suddenly it happens all at once and he put New Zealand massively ahead in this game. Now, Mitch Santner is only 32 years old. And while he doesn't have a lot of red ball experience, he is very, very experienced as a cricketer. He's played in franchise leagues, he's gone around the world, he's played in World Cup finals, all these different things. Mitch Santner is obviously a very clever cricketer and is experienced. So my question is, are we about to see him peak? Has he worked out how to bowl in red ball cricket? And maybe over the next couple of years, New Zealand will end up with not one, but actually multiple spin options available for them so that when they go to Asia, they're no longer just going to lose like they have pretty much throughout their history. They're actually going to win. Like, is this his future or is this one incredible moment? But for Mitch Santner tonight, I don't think that matters because I want you to think about all those years of frustration, of bowling on Kiwi wickets, of not always being used, of being treated like salad, of barely bowling, of trying to get better, being mocked in the press at times, being hated by fans. And then he finally gets a moment in India to show himself at his absolute best. All those practice balls, all that trying to improve came out in one moment. If Mitch Santner is anything, it has been a professional who has always been working on his game. Today, that worked. And if this is as good as it gets, potentially helping his team climb the most unlikely mountain of all times, then this is very special. And even if this is all he ever gets in Test cricket, at least Mitch Santner got one great day. I have a book out with Abhishek Mukherjee, and it is called Overthrowing Cricket's Empire. And it's about the stories of how each team beat England for the first time. We go all the way back to the demon Fred Spofforth getting annoyed at W.G. Grace for acting a little bit like Alex Carey. And then we come all the way to present times with Rashid Khan's England's redemption. We cover every single team to beat England in a major international, but we also talk about the incredible stories, like the barefoot basher from Fiji that almost played for New Zealand. In fact, this book is full of tales like that, like how Pakistan lost a top batter after he was on the run from an angry husband of a movie star he was having an affair with, and also how one future captain of his nation realised he might have to go out and bat at Lords and that he didn't own his own pads. Cricket was used as a tool by the Empire, but what happens when those nations grow up and get good at it? Find Overthrowing Cricket's Empire on Amazon today.